Sup guys, I'm Kel, Red Zone Rogue, and welcome to another Force of Will strategy video. And we can focus. In honor of the recent Wanderer GPs, I am doing some Wanderer videos. I had Kirik before, and now we're doing Grimm. This is probably my favorite deck of that tournament, and I am so fucking glad that it got in the top 8. Huge props to the dude who was piloting that. I mean, props for not playing Sherry. I mean, fucking props for playing Grimm with, doesn't even have Energize. I mean, I'm very impressed. I thought it was super cool. I was very excited to see at least one old school ruler get into the top 8. So that's right, this deck is basically an exact copy of his deck that he piloted, good old green Grimm here. I do have a deck list in the description down below, as well as a list of the sideboard. Without further ado, let's get into it. So, Grimm the Fairytale Prince is actually a classic ruler for Force of Will if you are new to the game. This is actually one of the big rulers when the game first came out here in the United States. He was in the very first majorly released set. Anyway, Grimm the Fairytale Prince, he's a ruler human. You may pay the attribute of Fairytale Resonators with will of any attribute. So basically, we're playing a mono green version of this deck, but we have Resonators of all different colors because they're all Fairytales, which is pretty sweet. Also, he has an activate ability of pay 1 and discard a Fairytale Resonator, then you can search your deck for Fairytale Resonator, put it in your hand, you have to reveal it, and then you shuffle your deck. You can play this ability only once per turn, but you can also do it on your opponent's turn. He does not have a J ruler side, and he does not have Energize, but you don't need Energize when you are this fucking badass. As always, let's talk about the Magic Stone deck before going onto the deck prime, and we are running 20 Wind Magic Stones. Why are we running more than 10? Well, first of all, because it doesn't really matter because we don't have any variations in the stones. And also we have cards that help us put our Magic Stones from the top of our stone deck into the field. Playing 20 just makes it sure that we'll always hit a stone no matter what stage of the game it is. And we can get kind of grindy here and there doing like, you know, control-ish style play with Grimm. So the first card I want to talk about is Otherworld Dreams because this is the only non-resonator in the entire deck. It is a quick cast chant for one of any. You can cancel target spell your opponent controls. That's any spell. Then your opponent can play a card from their hand with total cost equal to or less than the total cost of the card. Cancel this way without paying its mana cost. Or without paying its will cost, I should say. So, I mean, you can use this to get rid of key cards, especially if you are fearing something in particular, like, you know, maybe a final battle or something like that. And then they, you know, maybe they don't have another one. Or maybe they have something crappy to follow it up with. Otherworld Dreams is just a fantastic card and a staple of the formats that it's legal in. So we're going to start the Fairytale train with good old Booty Cat. This is an iconic Force of Will card, Cheshire Cat, the Grinning Remnant. If you don't actually know what it does, I will tell you what it does. It is a 1 water cost Resonator, Fairytale. All Resonators are Fairytales in this deck, so I'm just going to skip that part from now on. It has an enter ability of draw 2 cards, and you can put a card from your hand back on top of your deck. And it says, this card cannot be targeted by spells or abilities. And it also says, when this card is put into the graveyard from field, shuffle it into its owner's deck. So it's kind of almost like a, you know, a brainstorm or something like that for Magic the Gathering, except when it dies, it comes back. Or when it dies, it goes back into your deck, and it also can't be targeted. Cheshire Cat's just a fantastic card. There's a reason why this used to be like a $30 card. No joke. This version, the original version of Cheshire Cat, was like a $30 card, and this one was like, you know, 200 or 300 bucks at one point. It's not that worth that much anymore, but, you know, it's cool to see a little bit of history. No pants history. Next up, we have another actually pretty spendy card with Little Red, Fairytale of Air. This is a Vingolf 3/GP promo only card, which is why it's so expensive. Also, it's really good. It's a 300/300. It says when this card gains 100 and 100 for each Wind Magic Stone you control, and then it gains Swiftness as long as you control a non-special Wind Magic Stone. So this is kind of like a, you know, a mono Wind Stone themed card. If you just play it for 1, it's basically a 400/400 with Swiftness, which is really good. I think that's probably the best statted Swiftness card in the game, and it only gets better as the turns progress. This card is like $7 or $8 a piece right now, and that makes this deck probably a pretty expensive Force of Will deck. This combined with, like, you know, the 4 Booty Cats makes it, you know, not a cheap deck, but it's also a really sweet deck and a really fun deck, and one that's pretty complicated because, remember, at any time you can pitch a Fairytale Resonator with Grimm to go search your deck for another Fairytale Resonator, so you can get, you know, whatever you need when you need it. So next up we have, honestly, a powerhouse in this deck. This is Dreaming Girl Wendy. She's a 200/300. It says whenever another Fairy Tale Resonator enters your field, recover this card. So that's sweet. So basically, whenever you play a dude, you can recover her and then attack again with her. And she says she gains +200/+200 as long as you control a Magic Stone and no special Magic Stone. So she's always a 400/500 for 1. As long as you control Eternal Boy Peter Pan, she also cannot be attacked against flying, which is crazy. So if you have Peter Pan, she's a 400/500 that you can, basically machine gun your opponent down as you play more Fairy Tale spells. Like, she's a very powerful card in this deck. Next, we run a 3 of Tinkerbell the Fairy. She's a 100/100 for 1. She's flying. This card gains +200/+200 for each other Fairy Tale Resonator you control. So this card can get pretty big if you have a pretty big board. By herself, she's not so good. She's not a very good, turn 1 drop, whereas, Booty Cat can be a good one, and so can Little Red. But, it can still get pretty big in the late game, and remember, you can always pitch it with Grimm to go get something else. Next up, we have Gretel, one of the best Fairy Tale Resonators ever printed, and also one of my favorite cards in Wanderer. She is a 2-drop, 1 of any, and 1 green. I mean, that doesn't matter because we're just playing all green anyway. Anyway, she has an enter ability of reveal the top card of your Magic Stone deck. If it's a Wind Magic Stone, put it onto your field. And yep, it's gonna be a Wind Magic Stone. She's a 200/200, but just a fantastic ramp spell, and just a fantastic card in general. Next up, we have another fairly spendy Resonator with Red Riding Hood. She's a 300/400 for 2 wind, and she has a whole mess load of text. She says, let me get it so I can read it properly. When this card is put into the graveyard from your field, you put the top card of your Magic Stone deck onto your field, rested. So when she dies, you get a card from the top of your Magic Stone deck. That's pretty good. And she gains 400/300 as long as you control 5 or more Magic Stones. So she becomes a 700/700. And it says this card gains Swiftness, First Strike, and Precision as long as you control 7 or more. So if you have 7 or more Magic Stones, she's a 700/700 with Swiftness, First Strike, and Precision. That's really cool. And if she ever dies, you get more Magic Stones. At one time, this card was actually fairly expensive. I think it's gone down a bit since then. I think you can get, like, your regular versions for a couple bucks. But yeah, it's just a fantastic card and kind of a no-brainer in this deck. Next up, we have another one of my favorite cards in Wanderer, Glinda the Fairy. I jump at any chance to play Glinda. I think this card is awesome, and I especially love the promo art here. So she is a Resonator Fairy Tale. I think I already said I'm not going to cover that, but I did it anyway. She has an enter of target Resonator cannot be blocked until end of turn. So combine that with, like, I don't know, Wendy and her ability to recover whenever you play a Fairy Tale. You can just machine gun your opponent down. And she also has an ability of banish this card, cancel target normal spell unless its controller pays 2. So basically, a normal spell is any spell that's not a Resonator, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's any spell that's not a Resonator. Anyway, yeah, Glinda is fantastic. She's a 500/500, which is, decent stats for 2. Usually 600/600 is where you're at these days. But she makes one of your dudes unblockable. And then you can, like, pitch her later on to counter stuff. Like, I don't know, it's such a good card. Next up, we run a 2 of Eternal Boy Peter Pan. He's a 500/600 with flying. When he enters the field, you can search your deck for a Fairy Tale Resonator with total cost 1 and put it onto your field, then shuffle your deck. So you can get, Booty Cat. You can get that Red Riding Hood that gets bigger for all your stones. You can get Wendy. Wendy's a good get with him. And he only costs 3. So that's pretty good. You can get some pretty good value with Peter Pan. He is a 3-drop, which is why we're only running 2 of him. But remember, you can always search him up with Grimm. And next up, we have Rapunzel. She's a 700/800 for 2 of any and a darkness. She says when this card enters your field, you can put target Fairy Tale Resonator with total cost 1 or less from your graveyard into the field, and you can rest her to rest a Resonator. We run a full play set of Rapunzel. Just a fantastic card. We have a lot of really good 1-drops, as you saw in the beginning. So being able to get any of them back, you can get Booty Cat for some... Well, does Booty Cat's draw enter? Well, you can still get, like, your big dudes back, which is pretty good. Next up, we have a Singleton Etna the Snow Queen. I am glad that this card is getting some play because I think it's actually a really good card, despite its incredibly lewd art, which, I would be lying if I said I wasn't somewhat of a fan of it. Anyway, there's Awakening of X. Enter. Rest X target Resonators. They cannot recover as long as this card is on the field. So basically, you get to lock down a bunch of your opponent's dudes. It's a really good late game card. And it says whenever this card deals damage to your opponent, he or she discards a card. And 700/700. So not too bad at all. It's a really good control fairy tale card, something that you can search up late game using Grimm's ability and just lock your opponent's board down, especially if they only have a couple big guys and no way to remove it. That's pretty good. And then finally we run Big Boy Captain Hook the Pirate. So he's a 1000/1000 for 3 of any and 2 water. Obviously he's a fairy tale. When he enters the field, put up to 2 target special magic stones on top of their owner's magic stone decks in any order, or return up to 2 target resonators to their opponent's hand. This card is just absolutely crazy. There are decks just built around cheating Captain Hook into play. He is that good. Being able to set your opponent 2 turns back with their magic stones is incredibly powerful, and late game, if they have a bunch of magic stones and it doesn't matter, you can always, remove some dudes from their field. Captain Hook is a great card, and probably one of the reasons why Tell a Fairy Tale is banned. And there you guys have it. That is my Green Grimm strategy video. I hope you guys liked the video. I think this deck is a ton of fun. Not only does it play very well and have a lot of complicated, lines of play, a lot of complicated strategy going in, like which Resonator do I go search for with Grimm? Do I get, something that's big and quick? Do I get something that's more controlling? Something that can get more dudes back? Something that can get me value? This deck is just incredible amount of fun, and it also lets me play with some of my, favorite Force of Will cards ever printed, which, is a big plus for me. A lot of the game for me isn't just about winning; it's about having fun and playing with stuff that I like, which is why I play a lot of rogue style decks. I'm so glad that this deck won or not win, but it top 8'd the GP, and I think this could get even better in Wanderer over time, especially if they do an updated version of Grimm with Energize, or if they ban some Scheherazade crap. I think this deck could, it's in a good spot. The only downside is that it's kind of expensive for a Force of Will deck. Booty Cats and this Little Red Fairy Tale of Air, they're not cheap cards. Some of these other cards are pretty cheap. You can get them for even promo versions of these, you can get them for 50 cents or something. And even Grimm himself is a 50-cent card. But, I digress. If you liked the video, then maybe leave a like, comment, and or subscribe. If you want to support my channel, then check out my Patreon. I haven't done an official launch of it yet, but if you want to help me get better equipment, better cameras, better editing software, I really want to take my channel to the next level, and that shit is expensive. I will continue making YouTube videos regardless, but if you want to help out, that is a good way to do it. I should have a link in the description, and there also should be a link on my YouTube channel if you want to check it out. But regardless of what you do, thank you very much, guys, and I hope to see y'all next time.